So why would anyone hang my iPhone on the wall? And how is this related to studying the Bible? Well, let's see. Imagine that you hand my iPhone to Father Abraham, yes, the one from the Bible, and it is his job to describe it to me. He has never seen an iPhone in his life, and I don't know what's in his hands. He'll begin to describe it. It's a small rectangle object made out of metal and glass. On the glass side, it has an image. The object is light and shiny. As I would listen to him, I would think, this sounds like a picture frame with a picture behind the glass. So there is metal, there's glass, there is image, and we can hang this picture on the wall. He did the observation, I did the interpretation based on his description, which leads to application. As you can see, the wrong interpretation of what he has would lead to wrong application. On the other hand, if based on the observation he made, I would guess correctly that he was describing an iPhone, his observation would lead me to the correct interpretation, which should lead to correct application. You can use the phone to make calls, send messages, take pictures, get direction, and solve math problems. In other words, only a correct interpretation can lead to correct application. The same is true with studying the Bible. Today, we are talking about inductive Bible study. This involves observing the text, interpreting its meaning, and applying the text based on the evidence found within the scripture itself. The first part is observation. To do this correctly, we have to do some travel, some imaginary travel. I live in the United States, so it's about 7,000 miles or 11,000 kilometers to get to my destination. For some of you, it's traveling from Asia, like India or the Philippines. For some, it's Europe. For some, it's Africa. We also have to do some time travel into the past, over 2,000 years. We have to move our minds into another culture outside of our own. We need to pursue the learning and imagine what was the life like during the Bible times. Imagine you're sitting at a table with them. What is the conversation like? What is the church like? What is their economical, social, and political situation like? For example, let's say you want to read the book of Ephesians. You ask, what was the city of Ephesus like? What was living in Ephesus like? Ephesus was a materialistic, secular, prosperous city. It was a commercial center with the best harbor in Asia, with gateway to Rome and other parts of Asia. Ephesus was an educational center with the Celsus Library, a home of 12,000 scrolls. It was also an immoral city with hundreds of temple prostitutes. It was a spiritualistic place. The temple of Artemis, a Greek goddess, was there. The temple was one of the 7 wonders of the world. Now, the temple of Artemis is also known as the temple of Diana, which was a Roman goddess. The theater could sit 24,000 spectators. Look how massive that place is. So Ephesus was an unlikely place to be reached with the gospel, and yet God had a church there, and the church flourished. And Apostle Paul and his associates came to support the believers in the city. Now, this was met with some resistance. The report was given among the locals that they could be losing business and influence because of those Christians. We read about this. Now, when they heard this, they were full of wrath and cried out, saying, "Great is Diana of the Ephesians." So the whole city was filled with confusion and rushed into the theater with one accord, having seized Gaius and Aristarchus, Macedonians, Paul's travel companions. A couple of verses later we read, all with one accord cried out for about 2 hours, "Great is Diana of the Ephesians." Now you can see Christians lived under difficult circumstances. Now with this in mind, you read the book of Ephesians. Paul is under his first imprisonment in Rome, writing to the church that is facing hostile circumstances. We feel compassion for them, and God's love is poured out towards them. When we read the Bible, we cannot read it like a newspaper article or a book written in our era. We need to do some prep work. So what does the preparation look like? Before I start to read my Bible, I want to know the theme of the book, the purpose of why the book was written. I want to know something about the author of the book. What was his background? What was his experience, condition under which he wrote it? I want to know something about the audience. Who was this written to? What were their circumstances? I want to know the genre of the book. Is it Torah and the law? Is it history? Is it poetry and wisdom? Is it parable or epistle or prophecy? Is it apocalyptic text which is filled with symbols? This will be crucial once we get to the interpretation part. There is language separation. The Bible was written in Hebrew and Greek. The words today have different meaning. We need to work through all of that. So being 2,000 plus years removed, I want to understand the theme, something about the author and the background and the audience it was originally intended for. I want to know, when was it written? What were the social customs and norms of that time period? The economic, cultural state, historical events taking place during that time. What did they face politically? When you read the passage, you need to consider the context within the surrounding verses, the chapters, and even the whole book. As you read, notice keywords and phrases and repeated concepts, metaphors, contrasts, comparisons, or parallels. And gather as much information as you can. Here are some questions to help you with this study. Who are the characters mentioned in the text? Identify their roles, like Pharisees, Sadducees. These are repeated characters in the Gospels. Also notice their relationships and their significance. Another question is what? Now, besides the question of what is the theme, we also ask what is happening here? What is the narrative or events described in the passage? Next is when. When did this happen? Establish the chronological setting of events within the passage. Then we ask where. Understanding the settings and locations mentioned in the passage, we also ask why. Explore the reasons or the why behind the actions and circumstances within the biblical text. And finally, examine the sequence of events and the cause and effect relationships within the narrative. So grasp the text in their time. Get in the text asking these 6 questions. Spend quality time doing this. Sometimes we talk about reading the Bible, but in reality, we don't just read the Bible, we study it. We listen to God, to what He's saying to us, reflecting on it. By the way, I have a video on 10 must-have Bible study tools. You will find the link in the video description. So observation should take the bulk of our Bible study time. Then we proceed to interpreting the text. While in the observation phase, we ask, what does the text say? The interpretation phase is about, what do these verses mean? The meaning is determined by the author. What the author meant when he wrote the text. The author had one interpretation or meaning for the original audience. And what was it? We need to discover that. Meaning is determined by the author and discovered by the reader. We don't assign meaning to the text. Our job is to discover the meaning within the text. And the Bible needs to be its own interpreter. So imagine the original hearer. What did they hear? Look through their lens. And what did it mean to them? And what difference did it make for them? In the book of Ezra, chapter 7, verse 10, we are giving principles of Bible study. The text says, "For Ezra had prepared his heart to seek the law of the Lord, and to do it, and to teach statutes and ordinances in Israel." So we prepare for a Bible study spiritually, then we study the Word, then we apply the Word, and lastly, we share the Word. The second to the last point is that we apply the Word. We live the Word. We implement the Word. We put it to practice. So we observe and learn about the passage. We interpret the passage. And now it gets personal. We ask, what does this passage mean to me? How will this change me? So how do we do it? We do a time travel of 2,000 years back to our day and 7,000 miles or 11,000 kilometers to our own homes and our own circumstances. And we ask, what does this mean to me, to my life, my priorities, my relationships with others and God? What is the principles from the passage that can be applied today? Reflect on how the passage personally impacts you. What does this passage tell me to believe or to do today? How will this change me? Consider your own experiences and circumstances in the light of this passage. Is there a command? Is there a principle to learn? Extract the timeless principles and truths from the passage. Consider how to integrate the teachings into your daily life and interactions. Contemplate how the passage contributes to your spiritual growth. As we don't want to just survive spiritually, we want to thrive. So there can be many applications based on our individual circumstances and cultural context and personal experience. At the end, I recommend journaling through the experience. Write the points you learn in your own words. This will help you gain clarity and it will help you organize your thoughts.